Welcome to Inside Carolina's postgame coverage of the 42-point win over Winston-Salem State. I'm Tommy Ashley. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt. As always, if you're a premium member of the Inside Carolina message boards, you know about the Johnny T-Shirt code. If you're not, you need to join up so you can get Rob Harrington's premium insight on the daily, almost, at Inside Carolina on the UNC basketball message board. Johnny T-Shirt's your go-to spot for all the swag. Rob, let's get into it. First, and I'll lead this way. First 20 minutes, I thought, there was no danger of ever losing that game, but there was danger of that game being an omen-type performance. But they turned it around and played much better in the second half. Your overall thoughts?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I was sitting there at halftime like, oh, boy, what kind of show is this going to be? Because, like you said, I didn't think they would lose, but it sure was rough. And after BYU, I think a lot of us were expecting and at least hoping that they would build off of that performance and start to tighten up heading toward the regular season. The last 15 minutes of the first half were something of a debacle, to be honest. In the second half, you saw them playing much more freely. They started playing up tempo, so they started. The shooting came to life that we've been hyping up at least I've been hyping up a lot the last few weeks. And they finally started to knock down threes. They made more plays defensively. They had depth show up. Guys off the bench were playing well. So there were a lot of positives in the second half. Taken in conjunction with the first half, it's still a whole lot to work on.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the first half sort of reminded me of some of the performances last year. And granted, it's a completely different team, but it looked very familiar. Somebody in the chat says sleptwalk or sleepwalking. There's a lot of lackadaisical play, except for one guy in the first half. Caleb Wilson, Rob, 100% as advertised. And that's not usually the case, at least early, for a Carolina freshman not named Tyler Hansbrough and some of the others in the way back. But let's talk about and lead with Caleb Wilson. I think our over-under show last night had him at what? 15, 16 points?
14, and I went under, which was a dreadful mistake. I'm hoping that we will delete that one from YouTube, and no one will watch it.
They never disappear. I believe my quote was well over and maybe pushing 20 points a game. He certainly looks the part, Rob. Just his overall game. And what I like the most is his activity and his – I don't know if I say he plays angry, but he certainly plays aggressive, and that's going to lead to a ton of points, a ton of rebounds for him.
He is not only very talented, as you note, but he fills in some gaps that the team is missing. One of those gaps, I think, is overall athleticism. He and Seth Trimble are the two guys who sort of make in-between plays. I think overall athleticism on this team is very much subject to scrutiny entering the season. The other thing is, I thought Vesar and he would sort of split rebounding duties, but so far it's been Wilson as the prime rebounder by far. Vesar, I believe, will get better, but Wilson again fills that gap. What should be sort of a shared responsibility, he's taking that on himself. I think if anything, they may become over reliant on him in certain situations, at least against top opponents. But that's sort of why you want a guy like that. It's not the worst thing in the world. He certainly seems ready to take on that responsibility himself. So he's way ahead of where I thought he would be. I mean, of course, we knew he was good. I thought he was going to be more of in the Drake Powell mold of someone who shows you some flashes and sort of dips in and out. But there's been no dipping out. I mean, he's locked in.
Yeah, and for folks in the chat that haven't seen the box score, I see Melinda in there saying she hadn't seen it. Wilson, 23 and 10, 9 of 13 shooting from the field, 0 for 2 from 3, 5 for 5 from three-point line, an efficient 23 minutes of action. Here's one concerning thing, and this is something we've talked about, and it's the rebounding aspect of this team. And you mentioned the name, Henry Vesar, 1 rebound tonight. 1 rebound in 22 minutes against Winston-Salem State. Now, granted, you can't really look ahead and extrapolate off of too many exhibition games, but that to me is a concerning stat for a team that's going to need all hands on deck rebounding and to help Caleb Wilson in that department. Rob, your take on that aspect of tonight. That is the one to me, really big red flag negative.
I thought, yeah, I agree. That was a red flag. I mean, he just has to become more physical overall, not only as a rebounder, but as an interior scorer, just more assertive within the offense. And that sort of dovetails into the other thing I thought was a big problem in the first half, which was the half-court offense really did not function well at all. They were just having a hard time getting into their shots. That speaks not only to Vesar being quiet, but also the lack of a true point guard. I think in the second half they were able to compensate for that because they were running. And what I still don't think they've answered that question of how they will function as a half-court offense when teams lock them down, which is going to happen at no later than next Friday against Kansas. So I'm real curious to see how they deal with it. And obviously, I think you can see why they want to run because that opens up a lot of what they do. But the Vesar rebounding thing, I mean, they can't afford for him, and he can't afford to disappear like that and to take a back seat.
Yeah, the one rebound in which Zayden High came in and had 7. We talked about how poor he played against BYU, and he stepped up and was active and had 7 rebounds, 8 points, 5 or 6 from free throws. And he had 3 assists and no turnovers. So I think that is what you want to see, especially if Vesar is going to struggle on the boards, Rob. Zayden in that role is where he needs to be.
I thought he had a really nice game, and he shows you what he can provide, even if he doesn't hit threes. I know he hit one. What I liked were there were a couple of occasions where he's coming up the court. They're getting pressed a little bit. He's a nice outlet for the guard, which, again, they don't have a natural point guard. So he alleviates pressure, and he's a good passer. He's confident dealing with pressure. Little things like that add up. I don't know if I would want him to be playing center for 10 minutes a game against a more powerful opponent. I mean, even tonight he got pushed around a little bit, but he was under control. He was contributing in a variety of areas, as the stat sheet shows, and that's what I think everyone was looking for him, and why I'm not willing to give up on him, even after the very poor performance against BYU.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important role, and I want to stay on the bigs, and we text back and forth during the games, and I was thinking it, and then you texted it. If Carolina can get that Jarin Stevenson, granted, we have to look at level of competition, but corner threes and wing threes are usually going to be there against everybody. He certainly showed that a couple of years ago against Carolina and against Clemson. I think if Carolina gets that Jarin Stevenson that we saw for that stretch, they will be very pleased that the young man came back to Chapel Hill.
I was very happy with his confidence looking for shots. He wasn't forcing anything, but he wasn't passing them up either, which is exactly where he needs to be. The other thing I liked about his game is just he seemed to be more of a physical presence. I thought, we were talking about how that was an issue for Vesar. Yes, overmatched opponent, but he made the most of his size advantage, which is exactly what you want from him. And assuming eventually that, yes, Bogovac gets cleared, Stevenson probably goes to the bench. They need someone to come off the bench and be really productive. And I think right now he's the most likely candidate, while Jonathan Powell sort of feeling his way. Zayden High, as mentioned, I think is going to be a utility knife type of player. Stevenson is the one I think can give you some offensive punch.
Let's talk about that a little bit. And Luka Bogovac's not playing again today. We did the show yesterday on the assumption that he was going to be cleared. Quite frankly, I've been around long enough to know that until he walks out on the court, he's not on the court, and we don't know what to say and what to think about it. But regardless, if he's cleared and he plays, how much is missing these live action scrimmage games against another team is sort of a setback, especially with Kansas on the horizon, sort of a setback in the chemistry department, in the flow department, because we're expecting him to be a starter. You don't just walk out on the court having not played, especially against a top flight team. How does that play out for this North Carolina team? I think it sets them back at least a week or two in the grand scheme, assuming he's eventually cleared.
Yeah, I mean, that has been on my mind as well, because we've talked already extensively about the Kansas game. How is he going to be battle ready, especially if he doesn't play on Monday? Now, hopefully, if he gets cleared for Monday, at least he gets one game under his belt just to sort of knock the stink off. going into Kansas. I would hate for Kansas to be his first game. If that were to happen, I doubt that he would start because it's asking too much. I mean, yes, he has a ton of experience that will help. He's not going to be intimidated by those guys, but at the same time, it's a different environment, a different country. First time in live action. I wish that he had, at least if he had gotten there tonight, I thought, okay, 2 games is probably enough to be ready for Kansas. Now I think they are behind. Hopefully not 2 weeks behind, but they could at least be 5 days behind. And if that's true, and that 5 days includes Kansas, that's definitely a disadvantage.
Yeah, and I think, and you make a good point about that. He is obviously an experienced basketball player, has played a ton on a high level, but still, chemistry is a thing, especially in college basketball. And as we've seen on the other side, on the show that I will do in a few minutes, on the football side, professional is not the same as college. It's just not. It's the same game, but there are different nuances there and different players and different skills of players that Bogovac has certainly practiced with, scrimmaged against, but in other competition has not had that opportunity yet. So we'll see it. We're talking with Rob Harrington here on the postgame. Carolina eventually blows out Winston-Salem State. I just thought of how cool it would have been to see Big House walking up and down the Smith Center floor there for Clarence Big House Gaines working the sidelines for Winston-Salem State. I thought that would have been an epic moment. But Rob, overall, we also saw some other issues, some positive, but some other issues. I think point guard play is in the first half had us worried. In the second half, if they're running and they're moving, it doesn't really expose itself, I guess. But your thoughts on Kyan Evans and Dixon's performance?
Neither of them is really ready to step in and be a number 1 point guard for an elite team. I think that goes without saying. And I think probably will be the case all year. They're going to have to work around it. And I do think they are trying to work around it. I don't think what happened in the first half was a case of point guards trying to do things they can't do. It was the offense not functioning well enough to overcome it. And these limitations are pervasive because it shows up possession to possession, and they won't be able to run all the time. Now, some of the remedy is to run as much as you can, and I do think they'll get more comfortable. I mean, I thought Evans hitting a couple of threes, hopefully that will get him going. I mean, that's really his game. Dixon's a freshman. I'm very high on him, but he's not ready to step in and play huge minutes yet. It's just something they'll have to grow through and try to hang in as long as they can. I mean, to the point, can you find a way to beat Kansas and it buys you time? Because they have 3 weeks after that game before Michigan State. So if you somehow beat Kansas, now these guys can adjust at a little bit more of a leisurely pace. Not that these other opponents are a joke, but they're not playing anyone at that caliber for 3 weeks. So I'm really homed in on the Kansas game. And then after that, let's take stock of where these guys are after a month. It's not going to be Elliot Cadeau or even RJ Davis, who wasn't a classical point guard. They don't have that, but hopefully by then they'll be able to work around it.
Yeah, I think you go all in on Kansas. You empty the bag against Kansas on next Friday night and sell out everything to try to win that game. And then to your point, you've got some time to sort of stretch your legs, get into it, and then see what else you can work out. Shout out to the over 500 people. Look, this is an exhibition. There's almost as many people in this chat as there were in the Smith Center, it seemed like. It certainly
oh, yeah.
It's 500 plus in here, Rob, to hear us talk about Winston-Salem State. This season is going to be flat out wild once it really gets kicking next Monday and then next Friday night. But just final thoughts here, because quite frankly, if you're in the live chat, jump over to the other YouTube channel, YouTube link, and I'll be doing a football show here in about 10 minutes, 12 minutes. But final thoughts on this one, final thoughts on the preseason. Carolina gets it going Monday night against Central Arkansas. Have you adjusted any of your expectations that you had maybe 2 weeks ago even?
I haven't adjusted my overall team expectations. I have adjusted some of the individual components. So I'm a little bit more worried about Vasar than I thought I would be. And I'm a little bit or substantially more excited about Caleb Wilson than I thought I would be, because I really didn't think that he would be putting up numbers like this. and maybe not all of that stuff will translate, but I think a lot of it will. I mean, he's a stud, and he's going to be a stud against every team that they play. He won't always have great games, but he's always going to athletically and physically be competing well against whatever people throw at him. So it's sort of a jigsaw that way, but I still think the pieces are there for this to be a very good team. There are some real pressing questions, and if you get the type of effort you saw in the first half with that lack of execution, then yeah, things are going to get ugly here sooner than later. But I'm optimistic that won't happen. I think to your second question, the overall preseason, I thought it was successful. I mean, no injuries. The only real personnel issue is Bogovats, which is the flukiest, strangest fact pattern. I've never heard of such a thing, to have someone cleared by the NCAA and admitted attending class, and yet there's still some sort of institutional holdup. I have no idea what that's about. But apart from that, I thought it was successful. I thought tonight they made substantial gains with the bench. Just getting those guys in there, playing a lot of minutes. We saw Isaiah Dennis for the first time. You just getting those guys out there, you getting some sweat on them, and hopefully developing a little bit more depth than what it looked like they had against BYU. So I thought the preseason was a success, but I'm also glad it's over. Yeah, and I'll be real excited to do Monday regular season. It all counts now. No more caveats. It's here. 31 regular season games or whatever it is. So let's go.
Absolutely. Let's get it. It is. It feels like we're 2 weeks into the season already. But like you said, and to your overall point, these preseason games, these exhibition games against BYU, against Winston-Salem State, have been immensely valuable for Hubert Davis and his staff and for this team. You mentioned Dennis getting some run tonight. You got Young and Powell. You've got all these guys showing what they can do against someone else and not going off in a blue-white scrimmage and scoring 30, and then everybody thinks that Terrence Newby is going to be a major factor. You know what I mean? And no disrespect to Terrence, but I remember those days, and those were blue-white game things that happened, and we thought, this guy might be something. These guys have had the opportunity to do it against real teams, Brigham Young being an upper class team, and then Winston-Salem State having some guys and playing a little bit of defense. But Rob, anything else before we get out of here? I know you said you're excited. I know I already asked you your final thoughts, but my question to you, I'm going to make you make a prediction here. Based on the show last night, and folks, if you're watching this and you have not watched our over-under show, get it watched before Monday. Based on what you saw in the over-under show, who's going to win when it comes down to March or April, whenever this season ends? Who had the most correct picks? You, John Bowman, me, Greg Barnes, Jeremiah Holloway?
I thought Jeremiah had very strong, balanced, and sensible picks. When I went back and looked at mine later, I thought I might have gotten a little bit out of balance. Too many consecutive unders, too many consecutive overs, in ways that are not very complimentary. We'll see about that, but I reserve the right to be completely correct and to trash talk you and everyone else in the spring.
We will bring it up quite often, and I reserve the right to be wrong. I have been wrong plenty of times, but one thing I'm right about is it's going to be a fun season. These post games are going to be fun. Doing them with Rob, I had the pleasure of doing a lot of them over the years, and Rob is one of the best at it. So the 512 people currently in the chat can agree that this is the spot to be for your post game Carolina basketball. Inside Carolina, InsideCarolina.com. The message boards are great. Join us after every game. We will be right here, and we will be right here as well on Monday nights. If it's not a post game, it's the basketball show with Justin Jackson, Rob, and then the Coast to Coast crew's got you covered on everything else Carolina basketball related. And then, of course, VIP and Joel Berry. There's a ton of content at InsideCarolina.com. Join up on the new On3 network. Join up so you can support Johnny T-shirt. And join up so you don't miss one of these. Rob, it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. See you Monday.